Greetings. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marie, your moderator. And on behalf of our presenters, ViewQwest and Palo Alto Networks, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all for today's webinar, No Branch Left Behind, Enterprise-Grade Security for SMEs and Small Branches. In this webinar, we will explore branch security and its potential weaknesses, and at the same time, we'll cover changing needs for IT teams for multi-branch business. And we'll also do entry points for cyber attackers and how the majority of these threats can be easily prevented. Lastly, next generation technologies and ML-powered solution delivered as a service to secure company branches. Now, before we begin and before I introduce you to our speakers, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules. All participants will be muted and your cameras are being turned off throughout the webinar to enable the speakers to present without interruption and of course for your privacy. If your connection stops, just log off and log back in, and you'll be in the webinar room once again. Anytime, should you have any question during the presentations, you may submit via Q&A function located at the right panel of your screen. This session is being recorded and will be sent to the registered attendees afterwards. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker. Joining us today is Rohan Maheshwari. Rohan is a director for business development at ViewQwest, a seasoned professional in the telecommunication and information technology industries. He has been helping customers in the network security transformation journey through better understanding of next-gen solution and technologies. Joining Rohan is Ryan Chu. Ryan is a regional sales manager at Palo Alto Networks. He has been assisting clients on securing their digital and transformation for more than 10 years. Now, without much further ado, I will turn over the time to Rohan. Rohan, the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Marie. Just give me a second. Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here. Okay. So today we'll be, talking about how we've been able to bring enterprise-grade security, along with Palo Alto Networks to small and medium businesses, and the objective here is, really to ensure that there's no branch that's left behind. Just a quick recap, as our customers and putting your trust in us, we'd just like to share some of the recent success that we've had. So we do have our headquarters in Singapore, and of course we're in Malaysia. And in 2019 we opened up in the Philippines. And we're providing not only domestic and international connectivity, but managed network services and cybersecurity solutions. And we've actually been recognized as one of the top 10 managed security service providers by Enterprise Security magazine. This is actually a global publication that's focused on cybersecurity. And the selection is done by a panel of CTOs, CIOs, and CISOs. We also received a 4.8 peer review rating on Gartner Peer Insights. And this is a customer review platform where customers can share their feedback in terms of, how was the quality of service that they received from us? How was the implementation? And did the solution that we provide, meet the requirements? So it's always good to hear, the voice of the customer, and the feedback that you have, so that we know what we need to do more of, and what we can do better. And finally, for 3 years running, we've been the fastest internet service provider in Singapore. And in 2021, actually, we remained the fastest internet service provider. And this is something that we have brought along to Malaysia, and we want to continue that success. And happy to say that we've been considered to be a trusted partner by several companies in Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines. For Malaysia, we have companies like UAE Group and Public Bank. We have NTUC, Singapore Airlines, Changi Airport Group in Singapore, and Philippine Airlines in the Philippines. And as we talk to these customers and try to find solutions for them, what we realized and what we found was that every company has different requirements. They have a different need and a different challenge that they're trying to address. And that's kind of why what we're trying to do is introduce solutions that meet the unique business requirements of companies of various sizes and challenges that they're facing. So whether you're a small to mid-sized company, or you have multiple branches, you're growing and opening up more branches around the country, or you have expanded globally and have started opening up overseas branches, and you have employees that are working overseas as well. So whether however the requirement may be, we've found a solution that would help address some of the key challenges that are being faced. So today's webinar is focusing on how we are able to address the security gaps that small and medium businesses are facing, and how to bring enterprise grade security to address those challenges. There's this common myth where hackers only want to attack major multinationals, and that they're not really paying attention to SMEs. This is not true at all. In fact, SMEs are one of the easiest targets because they don't have a multi-layered security approach. In Malaysia, 97.2% of all the companies are SMEs, and 84% of SMEs in Malaysia have actually experienced an incident where they were a victim of a cyber attack. And 76 of these SMEs have been hit more than once. So these are staggering numbers. And just to add to this, there are 44% of organizations that fell victim to an attack in the last 12 months. And if you look at 2 years ago, before the pandemic, not a lot of SMEs would take security as seriously, but with the ways of working changing and people working from home, employees working from home, this has changed drastically in the past 2 years. 41% of companies say that it was a serious or a very serious attack, and 64% say that it took longer than a week to remediate. In 1 week, a lot can happen. So it's important that you're able to address attacks as they come in, and isolate them from your environment so that it does not affect your employees or your company's goodwill. And earlier this August, we actually released our new product in partnership with Palo Alto Networks, featuring their next generation firewall, which we bundled with their connectivity services. And the idea here was to make sure that we're able to provide the solutions that we're giving to multinationals, enterprise, big enterprise companies, and we're able to bring this to the small and medium businesses. So at this point, I'd like to pass the screen on to Ryan, who can talk a bit more about the next generation firewall of Palo Alto.
Hi, thanks, Rohan. Thank you very much for joining us today. Definitely, we are happy that for ViewQwest partnering with us. So my name is Ryan. I'm from Palo Alto Networks Malaysia. So Thank you. So continuation from Mr. Rohan's presentation, right? Talking about branch security. Well, definitely is true, right? Because branch security now is actually is as crucial because it actually is all interrelated. So from here, I would just proceed with my, enterprise grade branch network security for your business. So let's look at it, some of the pain point that most of our customers are facing. Well, even though it can be a SMB or it can be branches, but pretty much what the issues that we're facing is pretty much the same. So for example, processes are too manual, right? Because a lot of things you have to do it manually. It's not really automated. So one of the reasons is like, it's kind of like it has been brought forward from the previous time. So now we need something that to help us to do that. For example, optimizing your policies on your firewall, recommending something to you. So that is something that we are gearing towards too. Well, lack of skills, solutions are really complex. Well, looking at it, most of the time is like the new threat is coming in. Then we are looking for something to address that particular solution. Well, then a couple of more years, then the new threats come in, then we keep on adding more and more things into it. So this is kind of like siloed approach, and it only can bring you so far, right? Because over the years, definitely it will become more complex. And of course, not mentioning that as well, it could be quite difficult to use. Why? Because now instead of managing one, you have to managing 3 or 4 kind of solutions in order to prevent all these threats. So this is something to think of. I'm sure that everyone have gone through that from customers' point of view. So this is something we are trying to address. So when you look into distributed branches, so what are the things that is really needed? So first, well, we really need to look into a great enterprise grade, right? It's no longer that, oh, branches, I do not need to invest that much. I just go by with a certain basic kind of like protection. Well, that is no longer true. Everything is interconnected nowadays. So from branches, if you secure a lot, invest a lot on your HQ or your DC or your DR, but then again, if your branches is not that secure in a way, it is pretty much doesn't make much sense, right? Because it's all interrelated. Attackers will probably focus on from the branches first. So this is something that we have to take into consideration. And then let's say if you have like many branches, like retails business, like development business. So you probably have a lot of branches up there. So what do you do? How do you manage it? Do you need to send everybody to go in and install and deploy one by one? That could be really time consuming. So here, definitely we have to take into like, the kind of zero trust, zero touch management, whereby you just ship over the appliance and it can be configured automatically from the HQ itself. So this is something that it helps a lot in terms of the operations. And sometimes in branches, right, some of the environment might not have a server room. You might need to look into some of the design hardware that is really reliable. So this is something that you really look into, because of course, if it's operating beyond a certain temperature, it might not be so good for your appliance, and it kind of like degrades the durability of it. So these are something that really to ponder, even though it can be branches or even SMEs businesses. So let's talk about cybersecurity consolidation. This is where Palo Alto comes in, right? So our approach is really kind of like different than major vendors out there, other vendors. So what they do is, like, as I mentioned earlier, they do have a specific solutions to address a specific need. But what we do slightly different is that we go with the consolidation route. So this is where we build our portfolio, our platform based on addressing different needs. So when you talk about response, right, typical industry response is manual, as I mentioned earlier on. It's really labor intensive. So when there's a new attack, you need to engage. You need to have to look into it. So this is something that if you really look into it, you need to react to new attacks, because it kind of like happens daily. So then, of course, new devices, if you are installing a certain devices, IoT devices into your environment, like for example, those in manufacturing customers, right? You have millions of dollars worth of machineries out there. So how do you really protect it? Most of them are really protected by a very basic legacy kind of antivirus in their system. So that is not really going to help a lot, right? So this is something that we need to look into as well. And of course, react to environment changes. There is a result out there. I think there's 99%, right, of the firewall breaches actually not really due to the appliance or the vendors. It's actually much more on the human error on the configurations. So this is something that it happens, even though you have the best of breed firewall out there. If they configure it, misconfigure it, it will be good as nothing. So hereby, we would like to introduce to you guys the first world machine learning powered NG firewall. Actually, we have launched this about a year plus ago, and so far, none of our competitors come close. So, but then again, this is how would I say? It's something that people will say that, oh, everything is ML, everything is AI. But let me share with you what are the really differences that we're able to provide. So why we will need machine learning, right? So first is to prevent some never seen before items. Those that already available signature updates, those can be protected easily. But something that is new. So if this is something like it happens like a few minutes ago, the thing is like, will you question yourself? Will your environment able to protect against such threats? So some of the attacks, as you can see, that happens like stay in your system for months, right, without noticing. So these are some of the targeted and slow attack, which we have to really look into. If you do not have a devices or tools in order to detect it, then basically it doesn't really serve the purpose. And then the configurations. Remember I mentioned about the misconfiguration parts. So this is where we're able to help on recommending the policies, and the configuration changes suitable to your organization. So we do not need to ponder it's like, oh, I need to go by a certain policies and I need to update it frequently. Not really, because we're able to have that system. We're using the machine learning to help you to recommend the best practice as possible. And then detection via cloud scale. So this is definitely where we are leveraging on, right? Everyone is going to the cloud, and that's a benefit of it. So here, most of our security services is actually delivered via the cloud. So it's fast, it's almost instant, and it gives you the better protection in terms of the updates. So here is our part of platform. So you might look at it like differently, right? So when we talk about our NG firewall, actually it's not just a physical NG firewall. It does come with a software version, or we call it a VM series, because it can be deployed in your public cloud, private cloud, or even anywhere. So this is to cater to the customers like deployment. It can be anywhere, because with the pandemic happens, it's not necessarily on-prem anymore. Things has been diversified. So we have hardware, we have software, and pretty much the happening or the hot topic nowadays is the cloud delivered kind of like services. So we can call it firewall as a service, whereby you don't really need to carry a firewall. It's actually in a software, but the capability delivered is exactly the same as you are protected on-prem. So when we talk about security subscriptions, we have 9 security subscriptions now. I'll go elaborate on each and every one, pretty much highlight to tell you what are the different things that we are doing. And of course, on top of it, we have the panorama management, whereby those that you have many branches or you probably have many firewalls, you can actually leverage on this platform management in order to configure those and manage those centrally. So the first one, the first two, basically, the threat prevention and the wildfire, some may know it as the kind of like the legacy IDS, IPS prevention, gateway antivirus, malware, and so forth. And for the APT, wildfire is actually more like the sandboxing, detecting something that you never seen before, right? So first, what we are able to do slightly different from our in the industry peers is like we at the moment with the launch of PanOS 10, our first machine learning, we're able to give protection up to instant. So if you may wonder, what does it mean by instant? So we have some people, some vendors that provide SLA, right? They provide SLA, they say, okay, 30 minutes for updates. 1 hour, okay, it can be 24 hours or even some 48 hours. Well, we can do it in a matter of seconds. This is the SLA assurance that we're able to provide in order to our customers to prevent this kind of attacks coming in. So this is something that is a game changer. We have been doing it very well. It's all update constantly across. So up to 95% common, never seen before attacks, it can be blocked straight out of the box. So this is how good or how different we are against other security vendors out there. And then advanced URL filtering, well, this is normal. Everybody will say that, oh, I would like to protect against going to a certain websites when you're in work and so forth. So this is where we have brought in another feature. We have improved it into advanced. So this is, so for example, well, we have customers like education, right? You need to really protect it because students are really smart. They can evasive kind of things that they just Google and they can just bypass it through. But that is why we actually incorporated this advanced URL into it in order to give a few things. First is the real-time inline protection. So this is in line with the IPS, IDS, or threat prevention and wildfire that we've spoken about, right? So it immediately gives you updates. Known and unknown threats going through a certain website, you can block it straight away, or even we don't allow the access. So this is something that is beyond the standard so-called SLA anymore. And then, of course, you detect evasive or targeted attacks to your particular laptop or PC. So, for example, some of the management's devices, probably they just go with they don't really manage it that much. They don't really update and so forth. So these are something that even though it's offline or whatever, it kind of still updates because we are using those machine learning algorithm in order to detect that. And then cloud native services as well. Then we go to the third one. I'm going to be just quick. DNS security. Most of the time when we look into DNS security, you might need to invest a certain siloed solution via the cloud, or sometimes it's via dedicated appliance. But we incorporate this into our NG-File platform via just a subscriptions. So what are things that you can able to do, right? So for example, DNS tunneling, DGA, command and control, malware, newly registered domains. So I give you a few use case here. So imagine that some of the websites that you're visiting, they actually, previously you are able to block it, right? Because, okay, ABC is actually illegal or banned. You can actually just prevent it. But nowadays, all these websites are churned out in a matter of millions, and it can just bring it up and it just bring it down in a matter of milliseconds. So basically what the attackers trying to do is that they create a fake email, fake websites that you just click and you're able to just take control of your particular laptop and extract any information that you have. So this is really, really dangerous. Most of the firewall out there, they do not really have this kind of like protection built in. So this is where we're different. We're able to offer so much more. And IoT security, as I mentioned earlier on, it might not be limited to manufacturing customers. It also happens to basically every single SME out there. It can be a printer, it can be a camera, or it can be a smart reader. So how are you going to really protect this kind of like IoT security, IoT devices in your network? Well, we cannot install any antivirus into it, devices for sure, right? So this is how we do it. First, within 48 hours, we're able to see probably about detect 90% of all your devices out there. So probably you were able to detect some of things that you are not even aware of. Those probably a small PC or small items that is under the table is connected via your network. You might not have that visibility. So with here, first we'll tell you the vendor, what is the items, what is the devices, and so forth. And then move to next, we do have a database of an in-depth risk analysis, whereby we're able to check with a particular vendor if there's any vulnerability reported. So of course, you heard a lot of news, right? Hacking via aquarium pump, hacking via CCTV, and so forth. So these are not protected. Normally, customers will not able to look into it because there's just too much things to manage. So you really need to have this. So for us, we're able to help giving that kind of like in-depth risk analysis for you. And of course, the last step, right? We have built-in enforcement. So for example, if there's certain vulnerability reported and you're not aware of it, we do have this enforcement built in. So we're going to stop blocking these particular devices from going out to internet or coming in. So in this way, you're secure until you're able to identify the vulnerability and probably update the particular devices or IoT security devices. So this is overall, IoT is gaining momentum out there. It applies to many customers. It depends on their nature of business. So this is something that we can actually implement it zero hassle, because you do not need to introduce a new devices, introduce a new kind of implementation and so forth. It's just all in a matter of subscriptions. Okay, SD-WAN. So partnering with ViewQwest as a MSS, of course, we do deliver kind of a SD-WAN security as well. So we have basically two kind of SD-WAN. So this is the first built-in SD-WAN together with the firewall. So first, I'm just going to introduce here a bit. So these are some of the features that we added into our NG firewall via subscriptions. We do give you the help measures, like how good is your connectivity? Is there any issues and so forth? And we give you the exceptional user experience, because we do optimize the path and the accurate to make sure that the connectivity is smooth. And we do have a monitoring options for you as well to monitor where, for example, where does the connectivity stops? Is that a deal with application, or is deal with the last mile and so forth? And of course, just to introduce, we have another next gen SD-WAN, but that is actually on a dedicated kind of like device. So coming to 6, last DLP and SaaS security. So this one I just group it up together because this is all about your data, right? Well, customers will be those that in compliance, right? It can be in audit, it could be FSI. So these are all bound to certain regulatory in the world. There's no way that we can really escape that because we're going to get audited and so forth in order to comply. So then again, data breaches is a lot. Well, you can see there's a news, you see that there's a reported here and there. So these are things that you need to protect your organizations. So what are the data that you have inside your network? You have to actually prevent it from going out. Well, now data is just not limited anymore on your HQ or your DC or your DR anymore. Your data is virtually everywhere around the world, given the remote workforce, given the new kind of like new norm that we are actually facing. So it can be, we have 500 to 700 kind of like template out there, out of the box. Of course, it's customizable, right? And we do have regulatory compliance that already pre-built into it. We can actually able to tell you that what is not compliant and so forth. So this is something, of course, if you go with a dedicated DLP, it's going to be difficult to implement. And for those that implement before, most of it probably will know that some of the cases that they implement are very expensive investment, and it kind of turn into like white elephant. So we try to make it simplified with everything kind of like things. For example, DLP is actually really built in to incorporate to our firewall itself. So that is how we're able to do that. And the last, quarantine compromised devices. So this is where we are doing now, right? We are working from home. Some of it are working from anywhere. So this is where you need to have a security in terms of your connectivity from A to B. It can be from you to HQ and so forth. So we do need additional enforcement, right? Especially identifying if your host, is it protected? Are you getting the latest antivirus? Do you have a certain updates that required by your organizations? So this is something that we're able to offer. We do have as well as a free version, but for more comprehensive, we do have a subscription for that as well. So as you see, so we have a lot of 9 kind of subscription out there, just available for our NG File platform. So in the way, this is how we're able to consolidate it, right? You do not need to get siloed approach. And in terms of TCO, definitely it will be much more worth the value. So here is just a brief render. If you go by separate, you probably need about 20 to 30 kind of renders just to do separate items. So here, so most of the times we are able to consolidate it and make it easier to manage. So another question, you'll come to me and say, Ryan, there is 9 security services. What about the performance, right? So this is something that I will probably get it a lot. So as you can see, we improve from 3 to 9 nowadays. So what we do is slightly different. We are using our own architecture, right? We call it single pass parallel processing, SP3. So it's a layman term. Is what we do is like there's no performance degradation, even though you use 1 or you use 9. How we do it, because we do it like filtering 9 security services together. It's not like a typical most of actually all of our vendors out there, most of them are actually using multipass. You can see here, let me prove it to you. So here are some of the data, right? Just get from from varieties of vendors. So you may first is like, okay, assuming that I can see a very high throughput. So this is where you get hooked. You get a very high throughput. But as if along the way, when you turn on more and more security services, the performance degrades, and it degrades by a lot. So if you really come into it, you're probably getting 10% out of the advertised firewall throughput. So here we would like to share with you, we only have 2 liners, and one is without the security services turned on, and one is with. So like I mentioned, via our technology, future-proof technology, you can go with 3, or you can go with bundle and so forth, and of course in the future as well, without really the need of upgrading any particular hardware. So this is a unique thing about us. And of course, comes to it, the branches security. So this is something new. We just launched this few months ago, and we are doing amazingly, getting a lot of like requests on this, because it really fits the customers' needs of the branches, of the SMEs customers out there. So these are few models. I'm just going to go run through. But what I'm going to highlight here is like, of course, with the 3 of the models out there, it actually perform really high performance. It's actually even better than some of the models that we have, right? And actually, this is much more affordable. And of course, like I mentioned just now, it have to come with redundant power, online devices, and fanless design, because you may never know where are these kind of like devices are stored at. So with the not so, so cooling environment, this will do the best. And this is a subscription that I mentioned. It applies to all of our models. We do not have a separate version for our SME solutions. It's exactly the same OS, same updates, same UI, everything is the same. So we are actually really bringing out the enterprise grade security down to the branches. And well, we do have bundle for easier for our customers to basically choose, right? So we do have a few subscriptions like, professional bundle. With the bundle, actually, it's really much more affordable, and it gives you a much better protection. Let's say, for example, those looking into IoT or SaaS security, they might probably consider the enterprise version. Okay, last but not least, there's this thing that we actually able to offer more to our customers, operationalize functionalities. So there are 3 main things that we come to implementation. We are not just talking about the integration between software and hardware. We are also talking about the tools that are available to help us to do better. So first, we do have that kind of like tools to help our customers to migrate from the legacy POSIX protocol policies configuration up to the layer 7. So because now it's all about applications, right? So this is something that we're able to have. This is a tool right out of the box. And we do have migration services as well. We have tools to support few vendors out there to migrate without the need of reconfiguring the whole firewall. So this will ease the job and reduce the time for about 10 times. And last, the important one is this industry best practices. So let me show you something on this. So when you talk about implementation of security practice into your environment, first thing first, how good are your implementation? What's the level you are in terms of deploying it? Are you just migrating all your own pretty 10 years policy before this to your own firewall, new firewall? So that is pretty much 99% of the people do there, right? But what we have is something that is free and is available as a tool. So with this, you're able to see the adoptions of the configuration. So it means that, let's say, you acquired certain subscriptions from Palo Alto Networks, you're able to see that how many percentage you're actually utilizing it. So this also can be used as a scorecard. So what I mean by that is like most of the companies do assessment probably 4 times a year, once every quarter, right? So with this, you're able to show that, okay, we're starting with not so well policy tune, orange or yellowish, and then you move on to the greener side of things. Yeah, there's always improvement that can be done, and we have the policies and the tools to assist you to go towards, of course, the 100% if possible, to make sure that you are really secure. Hence, there's no misconfiguration on the policies issues coming up. And pretty much our commitment is to reduce with all these tools, right? Expedition, iron skill set, best practice, and even policy optimizer. These are the tools that will come together with our offerings. And some marketing slides, right? Analyst recognition. For those who are aware, I think I think Gartner just launched a new network firewall platform. Survey 2 weeks ago. So then again, no surprises. We are still the leader, and we have been the top leader for the past 10 years. But the exciting part is that you can see now there's a lot more vendors in. Even the CSP, the cloud service provider, are in the picture. Do they have a network firewall? Might not have a physical, but they do have it on their own cloud. And some of the SAAS vendors are in here as well, right? So as you can see, why this is something different, because you can see that the things have changed dramatically. And even firewall as a service is now part of the network firewall. So you can see much more convergence coming along. And we do have a solution for that. Perhaps some of the, I think there's one deck from Rohan later on. And then, of course, the global leadership in this is just an analyst from last year, whereby overall, we are pretty much the leaders, in June 2021. So this is the last step. So when we talk about ROI, this is something that we need to justify, because we're investing on something on security. Well, it's just like an insurance, right? We will never know what will happen. We never know whether we need it or not. So in order to do this, well, we do have tools that will help our customers in order to justify on why with the TCO, what is the TCO coming from this kind of like security investment. So we do have the tools. We'll share with you the link that you can go with it. Overall, we're giving to our average about 200% ROI and even TCO out of the investment out there with Palo Alto Networks. So thank you. Thank you so much. I'll pass back to Rohan.
Thanks, Ryan. Let me just okay, so that was a lot of good information shared, and if any of you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box, and we can reply to it at the end of this webinar. And one of the things that Ryan mentioned, and I just want to highlight, is the flexibility that Palo Alto has created with all of these different features. If you were to go with a different vendor, you might need one solution for your secure web gateway, another solution for your VPN, another solution for your security, anti-malware, threat prevention. But with Palo Alto taking the platform approach, it's more like a on-off switch. You want to turn on your threat prevention. So there's one subscription for that. And then if you need URL filtering, you add that as well. And then, you just turn on that subscription. You don't need to get additional hardware, integrate with another platform. So that way it's been made much simpler. And that's like, what we're trying to do, where we're saying that we're bringing enterprise grade security to SMEs, where you have the ability to turn on all of these features, or take your time depending on what features are relevant and required for you today. And ViewQwest is providing this as a service. So instead of paying upfront for the firewall, you can just pay monthly charges. And with zero touch provisioning, it's easy to deploy and easy to manage. You have a panorama platform which effectively lets you manage all of your firewalls remotely. And with ViewQwest support, on top of providing support on your connectivity and your last mile, we also help with the implementation and deploying of these firewalls. If you have distributed branches where you don't necessarily have IT support, ViewQwest can do that for you. And we also wrap it up with our managed services. If you don't have the manpower, or you need to focus your resources elsewhere, ViewQwest can manage the security policies, the network policies, add and remove remote users, add access to certain sites, block access to certain sites. So ViewQwest can do that for you in 24/7. So some of the other use cases that we have found is not all companies have an office or want to deploy a physical hardware in their branch. So for that, what ViewQwest has done is we are offering infrastructure as a service, where we are hosting the firewall in our data center, and all of your branches are effectively connecting to this central firewall, where traffic is being inspected before it goes out to the internet or to one of your other branches. So to talk about that, so as I mentioned, you have a central security platform where you can secure and manage all of your branches. You don't need to maintain firewalls in all of your different sites, but there's just this single firewall that ViewQwest will manage and host for you. And it protects you from branch to branch security. As Ryan was mentioning earlier, it's not just your headquarters or your data center that you need to protect, but it's also your branches, because your branch is connecting to your data center or to your headquarters. And that can be a potential mode of vulnerability. If you don't want some sites or some branches to get internet access, you can block access for that as well and go through the headquarters if that is your requirement. And if you're looking for resiliency on your connectivity, where you get one from ISP A and one connectivity from ISP B, so that you have that redundancy in place, the solution does not have any dependency on which ISP is being used. And for your remote users, you also have the ability to provision all of them with the Global Protect license, which allows you to connect remotely from your home to the firewall, as long as the total amount does not exceed the number of users that have been licensed. So that this adds more flexibility. For example, let's say you have 50 employees, but you only have 20 that are actually using the VPN, in the last 90 days, then you would only be paying for the 20 and not the entire workforce. Secure Access is our cloud delivered and centrally managed security platform, again with Palo Alto networks that we're introducing. And this is really meant for companies that are distributed not only domestically but globally as well. So if you are starting to grow and deploy branches overseas, and you need an optimum way to come back and have your traffic inspected, what Prisma Access does is it has POPs all around the world, and the traffic is effectively coming to the central platform where it's inspected before going out to a SaaS application, to the public cloud, to the internet, or to access data center or headquarter resources. What it also has is, so this is a term that is known as SASE, which is Secure Access Service Edge. And this was a term coined by Gartner. And effectively, this is converging your network and security requirements and looking at it holistically instead of looking at them in silos. So for example, your remote users, your branches, whether they're retail, remote, or if you're at home, they're all being connected to Prisma Access where the traffic is inspected before going out. And all of your connectivity it's used leveraging on SD-WAN, to take the best path. And something unique about what Palo Alto is offering is they determine the route of the traffic based on application success. So, whether you're using O365 or if you're using a Zoom application, instead of looking at packet loss, jitter, and latency, it will look at the server round trip time. It will, so, these additional parameters, for example, even MOS score, which would be relevant for Zoom. So it looks at all these additional parameters that ensure that the application is working correctly, instead of just looking at layer 3, which is the latency, packet loss, and jitter. So that kind of wraps up the webinar today. I would like to thank all of you for attending, and thanks Ryan, for speaking for Palo Alto. At this point, if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
All right. So thank you so much, Rohan and Ryan, for running the discussion. So I hope our attendees have gained insights on how explore branch security and its potential weaknesses, and as well as a changing needs for IT teams of multi-branch business. So to our audience, we have received your questions from earlier, so thank you for sending them in. Now for the exciting part, we will proceed to the Q&A. So if we don't get your questions today, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. So let's get started. So we have here a question from our audience. So the question goes, how is the number of false positive from PA NGFW compared to the competitors?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Joseph. Let me answer this. So as you can see, there's one deck that I showed earlier on. By default, we already reach about 95% of accuracy in terms of prevention or protection against those known and unknown threats. So for those, sandboxing, those that never seen before, those are actually constantly learned because we are using kind of like machine learning. It will be hovering about 95, 96% at least. So this is some commitment or SLA we are able to provide. Yeah. Hope that answered your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Ryan. So this is actually our question for today. So thank you again, our audience, for sending your questions. So I think this is a wrap. So I believe for those questions that you probably may have missed to ask, so don't worry. So please, actually, you can send it to our speakers. So again, thank you so much, Rohan and Ryan, for running the discussion. So I trust that our audience can walk away with insights that you have shared with them. And we will be sending also our audience a Grab Food voucher worth $50. So for your enjoyment. So please keep a lookout for it in your inbox, and you should be able to receive it anytime next week. So if you have further questions, as I've said, or concern, and would like to arrange a consultation with our speakers, you may also visit our website, and you may also contact them in the details later on that we will be sharing through the email. So please take note, you will be receiving a webinar recording through your email. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you a lovely day. Thank you.